Right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the latest edition of our Kickstart Retail series. As you've all probably become familiar now, we run this every couple of weeks. My team put this together, and it's a mixture of informative, inspirational, and you never know, sometimes it's very entertaining webinars that we put together, as I say, every couple of weeks or so. And we're going to continue to do that to entertain you while you're locked down and potentially many of you not inside a store at this moment in time, unfortunately. Anyway, this one is entitled "What Next for Retailing?" And of course, I guess if you are listening to the news on Tuesday night, you'd say there's not a lot that's next for retailing at the minute. Very disappointing news that came out on Tuesday evening from the Taoiseach, which was really stating that they would review every other aspect of the economy, including retail, in April. That's given us an opportunity to go out with a press release yesterday that many of you may have seen, and also to lobby into government, and we've given the latest opportunity to do that was last night on the Tonight Show with Minister Damien English, where we certainly put a lot of the messages from retail across about how disappointed and frustrated we all are during this period of time. Anyway, enough of the disappointment and frustration. Before we introduce our main speaker, I'd like to welcome and thank and introduce our partners and sponsors for today, and that is Johnston Shopfitters. Conor Cahill is waiting in the wings, and I know that Conor is not only just going to give you a bit of an outline as to what Johnston are doing, but also I think he's going to give us a bit of hope and a bit of something to look forward to on the horizon. Isn't that right, Conor? There he is.
Bit of technical difficulty to get started with. Sorry for that. Yes, Duncan. Yeah, thanks very much. Maybe a little bit of positivity out there, but I suppose initially just to start, Johnston Shopfitters has been involved with retail excellence since 2007. I suppose more recently in 2012 we became a corporate partner. So as part of that, we're sponsoring today's event. Duncan and his team have brought together John as part of the latest Kickstart event, retail Kickstart event. And what is next for retail? As you mentioned, after the Taoiseach's announcement on Tuesday, we're all wondering what next, let alone for retail, but for ourselves as well. But I think John, with over 38 years experience, I'm really looking forward to what he's got to tell us today and what he's got to show us from other districts and what's going on elsewhere. So looking forward to what John has to say. I suppose you didn't come to listen to me go on, so I'll be brief. For those of you who don't know Johnston Shopfitters, we offer a complete retail fit-out service for retailers and the like. Everything from the wholesale of a simple box of hangers or a mannequin or some equipment for your store, right through to a complete turnkey solution. Everything from design, manufacture, installation, customer service, printing, all in-house. We currently have just shy of 100 employees, offices in Belfast, Doncaster in the UK, and our head office here in Dublin. I suppose from a fit-out point of view, people are asking what's happening at the moment and what's important and what's new. Because of COVID, I suppose the simple reality is you need to look at just some of the basics. Like everything, we need to look at housekeeping. Because of COVID, people are concerned with the environment they're in, so it's important to declutter and to offer customers space and a comfortable retail environment in which to shop in. The buzzword is retail experience. Give the customer an experience, bring them on a journey. So that is important, and we're all hearing about that, and I'm sure John will give us some more information on that shortly. And I suppose more recently, again with COVID, something that I've certainly noticed is first impressions and all around the new safety requirements for our stores and how we implement them in a professional manner. If you walk into somebody's store and the first thing you see is a bit of baling twine holding a plastic bottle with some hand sanitizer, what does that tell you about the shop that you're about to enter? So I think a professional approach to how we implement the new safety requirements is very important for all retailers and to offer their customers. I suppose finally, before I hand back to Duncan, as you mentioned, maybe some good news. I see retail fit out as I suppose the very start of retail in terms of the retail journey, and I suppose as a barometer, if you take it that we're extremely busy at the moment, be it from inquiries for new entrants into the marketplace, for companies looking to rebrand or to bring new branding into their office, their stores, their offering, right through to new concepts and compliance. So at every stage in the retail journey, we're extremely busy. So I suppose that can only offer some hope to retailers that there is a huge amount of pent-up demand out there from retail, from customers, that once we manage to get reopened and the customers can come through our doors again, that there is a marketplace. So yeah, if nothing else, that we can offer some small level of hope from today. So I'll hand you back to Duncan, and as I say, I'm looking forward to what John has to inform us of today. Thank you.
Thanks, Connor. It's useful to know, and great to get that information that things are live and kicking, and hopefully we're this is the start of a bit of a retail renewal towards the end of the year. I suspect that John might touch on this later, but let's hope for another hit of the Roaring 20s, shall we? 100 years on, is about yet to come. Anyway, before I go any further, I'm going to introduce John in a second. But if there are questions that you want to raise as we go through today, as always, just please click on the Q&A button at the bottom, and we'll do our best to answer them. I can't promise that we'll answer everything, but we'll do our best. John's going to talk now for around 40 minutes or so. And let me just do an introduction. So John Ryan, he's the founder of New Stores, a service that delivers information on new retail concepts from around the world. He's contributed to Retail Week for more than a decade and covers things like store design, visual merchandising, and what makes things sell in stores across every area of retail. And in a previous life, he spent 15 years as an international buyer for a major European retailer. And despite the fact that he's sitting talking to you today from the west of England in the lovely part of Somerset called Frome, I believe that deep down, John, the ancestry has to have something to do with Tipperary, surely, with Ryan as the surname. But listen, over to you, and I'm going to shut up and leave the stage to you for now.
Thanks, Duncan. Yeah, somewhere in County Tipperary, there are loads of people I'm related to, apparently. Anyway, I'm concerned when Connor says I've got 38 years experience. I have indeed, which means, of course, that I'm very old. But more to the point, let's kick off. I've been asked, they're calling me a retail futurist. I'm always a bit disturbed by that as a term, because if I really knew what the future was, I guess I might be doing something else. What I'm going to endeavour to do, however, is take a look at what's out there at the moment, what's new, and what it might indicate. And that's about as much of a futurist as I am, but hopefully it's good enough. So in no particular order, these are the areas I'm going to cover: digital, shop-in-shops, unmanned shops, in other words, staff-free, department stores, food and drink, the new, and then just a few thoughts on where we are actually headed as a result of all of this. So without further ado, let's kick off with digital. And I suppose one of the interesting things at the moment is you have to ask yourself, what do we actually mean by digital? I'm never quite clear. This is Bo Concept, who are a Danish furniture retailer, and they opened a flagship, they called it a flagship, in Dortmund, in northwest Germany, turn of the year in December. And they called it a digital concept store, which turns out to mean, if you look behind those curtains, there is a computer screen at which you can sit and admire things. That's about it. This doesn't look terribly digital to me. Wählen Sie Ihre Material means choose your material. Touch, feel, explore. Yeah, fine. It's a traditional shop that happens to have a screen in it and at that point, you are perhaps entitled to call it a digital store. But it's a very loose term. And to an extent, you can't help but think to yourself, we've been through a period in which people put screens up all over stores for customers to use. They say they're interactive, you can press them, you can watch things, you can link them up with your phone, etc., etc. But the truth of the matter is, you've gone to a shop, and all of those things I just mentioned, you can actually do without going into a shop. So why would you go into a shop? Well, you're going in, so you can, it says here, touch, feel and explore. This may be a digital store, but it's also a physical store. So what does digital really mean for retailers in 2021? Well, it might mean this. This is the IKEA planning studio on the Tottenham Court Road. Actually, it's not, it's the one in Nice. The one in Tottenham Court Road in London looks just like this. But this one in Nice opened about 6 months after the one in TC Road. And it's pretty nice, really. And you can only go in. You can only go in if you've booked an appointment. And there's no stock to speak of in there. There are a few room sets, but you wander in, and actually what they're offering you is a design service backed by a lot of stock. And they hope that by offering you the design service, you will buy some of their flat pack furniture, of course. And here we are. Here's somebody being advised. You either draw up a plan of your house with the person who's assisting you, or you can take in a photo of your house, and a little bit of AI, you can put the furniture into it on the screen, which is quite a clever idea. And just to prove it's a real shop, they have got room sets. So here you go. This is one of them. The point about all of this is you don't have to have very much in a store, and IKEA have realized that. One of the things about small shops is that the digital world gives you the capacity, if you play it in a canny fashion, to yield more. There is, however, a caveat in all of this, and that is the human touch should be taken for granted. None of this will work unless there is a human being involved. And we're going to come back to that when we talk about unmanned stores in a few minutes' time. But IKEA very cannily have thought, well, we've got big, big stores on the edge of city centres, but we miss out a load of people who rarely stray beyond the urban centre. And therefore, they are opening these planning studios where you can go and get a sense of IKEA-ness, if you like, without actually having to go out and lug huge bits of flat pack furniture out into your car. They will deliver it to you, of course. And they don't hold any stock in here. You don't buy anything that you're going to take away. They'll take it to your house for you. So not a bad solution. And it is that somewhere between digital and somewhere between physical, which it doesn't really matter whether you're big or small. That is an important thing to be able to achieve at the moment. And just to prove it's in Nice, there we are, Atelier de Conception on the left, and another picture of one of their room sets inside the store. It's not a big space, but it works. And if you really want to go the whole hog and not have screens, but have a digital store, get this. This is On. On, in case you didn't know, is a sports retailer, and they're based in Brooklyn, in New York City. And this is their store, or at least it's the outside of it. And most of you who are more active than me will probably have been to one of those big Nike stores or an Adidas store where they've got a running machine, and they're very keen to put you on the running machine because they'll then measure your stride pattern, your gait, your pace, etc., etc. And guess what? They'll tell you they've got the shoe that will accommodate all of your particular idiosyncrasies. In other words, it's a selling and marketing tool. And yes, it probably will equip you with a shoe that's better suited to your needs than if you just went and got one that you like the look of. But it, at the end of the day, is still a marketing tool. When you go to this place, they've got none of that. Instead, you run down this corridor wearing a pair of shoes, and it does exactly the same, but all the cameras are hidden. You have no idea that you're actually being filmed, or no sense of that. And yet, just like Nike, just like Adidas, just like Reebok, they will measure what you're up to. and On will produce a pair of shoes that will fit your needs. I think the idea of a digital store that doesn't look digital is one that we're going to find increasingly is what it's all about. Digital works really well to make shopping easier, but it doesn't have to be on view. And I think this is an instance of that. On the other hand, digital can be very much in your face. And to jump the digital divide for a moment, these are stores. They're virtual stores. And this is Diesel, the Italian jeans brand. They actually decided that if you're going to go online and sit at home in the comfort of your living room, as I am here, that's all fine, but wouldn't you like to be able to browse? One of the downsides of virtual shopping, and it doesn't matter again whether you're a big or small retailer, one of the downsides is that people have this tendency to put together websites that look just like catalogs, mail order catalogs of old. You flick through page after page after page, looking at product after product, and you gradually lose the will to live. There's no sense of an experience, no sense of browsing. So the more forward-looking brands and retailers at the moment are creating virtual stores. And the reason there are arrows on the floor is because you can click on those arrows and you can go up to one of those mannequins and get up close and personal and have a look. You can go to one of those gilets on the left-hand side and have a look at them. It's a simple thing, but it's something that to date, most people haven't done. Top left there, it's just like a shoe showroom, except that, I don't know about you, but I ain't been to many shoe showrooms where the shoes appear to float in midair. Nice trick though, if you can do it. You can do it virtually, of course, but it does look very much like their showroom in Milan, which was the intention. And just to give you another instance, some of you will know Charlotte Tilbury, and there she is, bottom left. She's a makeup artist who's found a massive degree of success globally by creating a brand that has rather show-offy shops. And she's decided that actually she's missing a chunk of sales by not having one of her shops online. So she's created an online shop that looks for all the world like one of her stores, her physical stores. And there we are. It says, join Charlotte live now. Well, of course you can't. Charlotte was recorded making up that rather beautiful looking girl months and months ago. But by clicking on her, you can get the sense. You can get the sense that you are understanding and part of a live demonstration. It is just about bringing the physical world into the digital realm. And it's a simple thing in theory to do. To make it work as slickly as this is really rather difficult and probably involves a fair amount of money or some programming and know-how, if any of you have got that. I know I haven't. But it looks very much like this will be the way forward. And the more people do it, the more there will be ways and means of effecting something along these lines without spending a huge amount of money. And what about shop in shops? Moving on. Well, I thought I'd start with one here in the UK. This is Tesco, and it's appliances online. Some of you may know appliances online. They're a virtual outfit. They sell white goods and small electrical goods. And back in, I think it was November, they opened a 2,000 square foot store in the middle of a Tesco in Middleton, which is near Manchester. It's a shop in shop, but it's really a discrete space. It's got walls, it's got its own checkouts, and there are benefits to both parties, of course. From Tesco's perspective, they've got somebody with expertise in a particular sector. They've got additional space because this isn't a Tesco Extra, so it's a big space. And with the fall in consumer numbers that we've been experiencing over the last year or so, you want to be able to use that space more profitably. So hiving part of it out to a partner is certainly one way of doing this. When we take a look inside, this is the first ever AO store, but it looks just like an electrical store. And quite niftily on the right-hand photo there, you can see they've used the white goods as a tabletop. And there's a screen, of course, at the end of it, because there's only so much you can get in this space. So if you can't find what you're looking for, a human, once again, will sit you down in front of one of these screens and take you through having listened to what you need, take you through the offer, the AO offer. This is AO jumping the divide from virtual to physical. And what it does prove, I think, perhaps, is that if you've got an outfit that is wholly digital and they're prepared to wade in at the first go with 2,000 square feet, there is still life in physical retail, which is good news. When eventually we do all get going again, I think shoppers will be coming back, because there's only so much, even if you do have a pretty decent virtual store, there's only so much you can take in terms of experience that can be replaced. You can't get that same thing as you would get in the physical store, which is why Muji have done this. And this is Ilum. Ilum's is the grand dame of department stores in Copenhagen. It's where you go if you've got lots and lots of dosh. Muji is not where you go if you've got lots and lots of dosh. Muji is pretty cost effective. And this is up on the 6th floor. And it's as big as a normal Muji. Those of you who don't know Muji, Muji is no brand. That's what it means. And it's Japanese, and they sell homewares, food, etc., etc. And they've created a complete store. Around about 25,000 square feet. It's as big as a Muji flagship. And to that end, on that left-hand photo, it says Tea House. This is the only one of its kind in Europe. And they decided to put it on the 6th floor of a department store where the customers wouldn't normally perhaps be Muji customers. But two things you're going to ask yourself: how are you going to find 25,000 square feet in downtown Copenhagen? It's fairly heavily occupied. And equally, from Ilum's perspective, by getting people who are Muji customers up through their space, who knows, they might stop and take a look on the way up to floor 6 at what else there is in Ilum. So there are benefits for both parties. And at a rather more mundane level, there's Decathlon, the French sportswear outfit, biggest sportswear retailer in the world, by the way, official. And they've been putting shop-in-shops in Auchan hypermarkets for a little while now. This is one in Orléans, which opened back end of last year again. And on average, when you go to a Decathlon, you can expect there to be round about 50 equipment and clothing for about 55 sports. In this particular instance, they get 48 into a space in a shop-in-shop, so it's a good effort. And I thought I'd show you this for no better reason than that Waitrose, as you know, is part of the John Lewis partnership, and they've been trying quite hard to create shop-in-shops of the other part of their organisation. So it looks like this. There's John Lewis inside a Waitrose, and this opened about 2 weeks ago. And those of you who embrace the joys of LinkedIn, I put this photo up, and 10,500 people have looked at it. And I've had 270 likes. It's more than I have ever had, which shows that there is a real interest in shop-in-shops and how things can be done. So I think the message perhaps is that in the times we find ourselves, if you're a big retailer, there's quite a lot of mileage to be had from inviting people and looking at people who might bring additional customers into your stores. If you're a small retailer, perhaps you should be considering going into places like this and looking around and seeing what your options are. But what about unmanned stores? Well, I thought I'd start with this. It's Pyatroshka in Moscow, and we've all become reasonably familiar with the idea, at least, ever since the first Amazon Go store, the idea at least of being able to wave a phone around at a QR code outside a store. It then lets you in, and then as soon as you pick something off a shelf, you've effectively bought it when you exit. And you have the vicarious pleasure of shoplifting, or so you think, until you examine your phone about 10 minutes later, and there's an invoice for whatever you've taken off the shelf. Amazon say it's done with deep learning and algorithms, for which read thousands and thousands of cameras. It's worth saying at this point that there are in fact, there are no Amazon stores that make a profit, Amazon Go stores that make a profit, because it's too expensive as things stand to make it work. And while you continue to look at putting cameras as the way of monitoring what people are up to, that will continue to be the case. That's inside that store. Rather more interestingly, perhaps, is what Monoprix, the French general merchandise retailer, have been up to at their headquarters in Paris. This opened again November, and it's for the staff in their headquarters. It's got about 300 SKUs in it, and the way it works is you don't need to download an app. Who wants to download an app if you don't have to? You can just use your bank card, and you put it in, scan it on the front there, and in you go. And every single one of those products that you see in the bottom right-hand picture there has a specific weight. And you pick up a shopping basket. And every time you put something into that shopping basket, it adds to the weight of the basket. When you come to checkout, you just put the basket on some scales, and it can work out through a truly clever algorithm exactly what you bought without thousands of cameras. This is one way forward. It's possibly a lot more cost effective than the Amazon method. We'll see whether it's adopted. And just to make the point, this is Albert Heijn in Amsterdam, and yeah, I mean, there is some mileage to be had in having shipping containers converted into unmanned stores in places of most need. I would imagine Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam probably isn't making a huge amount of money at the moment, and Albert Heijn will be wondering whether they're ever going to see anybody going into these stores. They will. It will return, and when it does, if you've forgotten to get yourself some water or some pocket handkerchiefs or whatever, you may well head here. And of course, there's this on a slightly larger scale. This opened middle of last year. This is in Seattle. They've opened one in Chicago subsequently. Amazon Go Grocery is Amazon Go, but bigger. It's just like a supermarket. And you walk in, and I think the whole point about it is you don't feel as if you're in a convenience store. You don't feel as if you're being watched. It's just a supermarket. And this is another instance of tech that doesn't look tech. You pick things off. You're being charged, of course. The only difference between this and a regular supermarket is that there is no checkout. You are checking out effectively whenever you pick something off the shelf, which is quite smart. And I thought I'd show you this. This opened yesterday or the day before. So I chucked it into the presentation because I thought it's kind of interesting. Rather than having stock on view, Edeka, who are a German supermarket in Renningen, which is down near Stuttgart in southwest Germany, have created at Vending station with Deutsche Bahn, the rail people, a walk-in vending machine. I suppose is the best way of referring to it. And you walk in here, and this is what you do. Instead of looking at products, they've got about 300 products that you can buy in this store. You just have the touch screen. There's no staff in there. And as soon as you touch something on that screen, a robot behind the scenes whizzes off, collects it. And when you finish shopping, you hit the pay button, and the robot dispenses everything you have chosen through a little hatch. As I say, it's a walk-in vending machine rather than a walk-in shop. And as such, it doesn't require huge numbers of cameras again, because all you're doing is touching a screen, and it ain't going to give you the stuff until you've paid for it. It also means that they can serve alcohol more easily than they can in unmanned stores elsewhere, because by using your card, they know how old you are before the whole process starts. So it's quite slick. And maybe another way forward for the kiosk style of shopping. What about department stores? I think we've all seen there's been quite a little difficulty for a lot of department stores over the last 12 months. And all I would say is long before COVID, that was already happening because brands were busy setting up on their own rather than going into department stores because people were quite prepared to go and look for things rather than have a selection of things in the department store. So perhaps a little redefinition is required. Monobrands, discounters, mass market fashion operators. I'm going to show you a few, and they all qualify perhaps as department stores. So this is Primark in Las Ramblas, and it opened last year. And I went to this and I thought it was pretty good, actually. One of the things that Primark pennies for you guys have done on a fairly regular basis in their bigger and newer stores is this. They've created atriums. And in Barcelona, you all know that Barcelona was the home of Antonio Gaudi, the weird Catalan architect who created odd-looking buildings. And a lot of them are sort of geometric. And to reflect the location, perhaps, on the balustrades that you see here, they've put in what look like bright backlit, tessellated screens. In fact, it's digital. And in fact, those can move at any stage. It's all about slowing you down and making you look around at your surroundings. I remember when they first introduced one of these Atria stores, it was at the Gran Via in Madrid back in 15. And I went to the opening and it's fantastic. And it's the first time I'd been to a Penny's Primark and seen people not going in, choosing and then getting out, but going in. You remember selfie sticks with your camera? They were leaning out into the void over the balustrades here. It was a five-floor store in a converted theatre and taking films of themselves inside a Primark. That shows perhaps how things have changed. And there is absolutely nothing to differentiate what's done here from the average department store. The only thing that makes it different is the price of the merchandise. And the same perhaps is true of Uniqlo in Hamburg. This opened tail end of last year. And once again, it's a very nice old building right in the center of town, huge space. And they've just overtaken Zara, I'm given to understand, or Inditex, as the world's biggest by turnover fashion retailer. But they are sensitive to where they are. And this was a bank at one stage. You can see in the middle photo, apart from the very nice feature that is the spiral staircase, you can see all the mosaics around the staircase, and they've kept much of the original stuff in there, punched a hole in the roof so you can get some light in there, and suddenly you have a department store. Once again, in all but name, it feels just as upscale as most department stores, and in many ways a lot more contemporary. And there it is from the outside. And just to prove that there are, in fact, some department stores that are still out there which are being built as department stores. This is the Galleria in Guangyo, which is just outside Seoul in South Korea. And the idea was, it was done by a Dutch architecture firm. The idea was that this would look like a rock face into which slabs of glass have been inserted. It's certainly an extraordinary building and probably wins last year's prize for most interesting piece of retail architecture. And this is what it looks like inside. All those tessellated windows that you can see from the outside there create an unusual experience within. What about food? Well, I thought I'd talk about, let's flick back there, 4 different sorts: easy on the eye, discounting, convenience, hospitality, and food to go-ish. But let's start with discounting. And one of the things about discounting was that whether it's Aldi, Lidl, Netto, Danish, and they opened this last month. And it's on the east coast of Denmark. And they kind of threw out the discount template out the window. The idea was that they would create a sustainable, because that's one of the big key words at the moment, a sustainable store that wouldn't cost any more than a regular store to create, and something that could roll out. Michael, who's the chief exec there, said that he didn't want to call it a flagship because he intends for this to be rolled out in exactly the same form elsewhere. And obviously they've done put a lot of wood in there, taken out the concrete because concrete produces a lot of emissions. By putting wood in there, they've sort of leveraged the Scandi heritage, if you like, and this is what it looks like inside. It actually could make you slow down inside a discount environment. You wouldn't feel too bad about shopping here. A lot of the time, a lot of discounters have managed to pull off that rare trick of making you speed up and hope that you can get it all over and done with fairly quickly. Not here. And so what can we say about it? Well, it's green. I said it looks at the local island heritage. It's not a flagship. It's cost effective and it encourages browsing. And I think the message is that just because you're a discount, think Primark, think Uniqlo, just because you are inexpensive, it doesn't mean that it shouldn't be about having a good time when you go shopping. And perhaps this Netto is a glimpse of a future mass market branch. And on the convenience side of things, you've got the new convenience. And this is Woolies in the inner western suburbs of Sydney. It's pretty nice, actually. Convenience used to mean corner shops. And I know in Dublin, you've been fairly slick with a lot of your convenience stores. I'll show you a few things that perhaps you won't have in Dublin, however. And one of the points about local stores, convenience stores, is that they should reflect what goes on locally. So in Coles Local, which is in St Kilda, which is Melbourne, they've got, it's that part of the world just around the corner from Queensland where they produce pineapples. They've got pineapple peelers, they've got what's for dinner, pet treats, and grab and go. So let's take a little look. Yeah, you can tell this is Australia, of course, because you don't cook in Australia. Look top left, how to build your perfect dinner. There's a real roughy, tufty, blokish sort of build your dinner here, mate. And what's for dinner? This is not about just grabbing and going. This is about suggesting what you might want that evening. And dogs aren't allowed in stores in any manner or form in Australia. They're far more health and safety conscious than we are here in Europe. But poor old Fido, who's stuck outside, can be rewarded from the pet treat bar. And there it is. There's the peeled pineapple machine. As it says there, you can peel a pineapple in just around 20 seconds. All well and good. I don't know the last time you tried peeling a pineapple, but it's a messy and unpleasant business. If you got a machine that will do it for you, this is about dealing with the local population and what their expectations are. Right, we should be moving forward now. There we go, yes. And I thought I'd take a look at this as well. This is the co-op in Lichfield. There's been a bit of a bandwagon going on with wood cladding generally. It does look quite nice. But there is a sense that this is a passing bandwagon onto which the co-op have jumped, and jumped fairly successfully. And they've done the buy by weight, bring your own container thing, top right photo there. And even the checkouts have been clad in wood. Actually, it doesn't look too bad. And on a rather more major scale, this is Target in Minnesota. They're a general merchandise outfit, but they do actually have quite large and efficient food retailing. And they realized that if you want to make it work and make people feel good, put some wooden rafters in there. It seems to be the order of the day at the moment. And I thought I'd bung this in just because not everything has to be about wood, sustainability, etc. Why not go to Boyanska in Ukraine and look at Silpa? Silpa is a Ukrainian supermarket come hypermarket operator. They've got about 70 of them, and every single one is different. And for this particular one, which opened last month, they decided they would make it look like a circus inside. Don't ask me why. I don't know, but it's kind of interesting. It might be slightly irritating. I know that if I were going shopping, I'd think, wow, the first time I looked at this. And I might think, wow-ish the second time. By the third time, I'd probably be thinking, wouldn't it have made more sense not to have striped balloons all over the place, etc., or indeed Harlequin-like figures in the cafe on the right-hand photo there. However, it does prove that people are still thinking of what they can do that will make things different. And let's have a little look at the new. I'm sorry to say, I wrote recently that I'd give a prize to anybody who, when they in retail, who when they talk about innovation, doesn't just mean tech, because that's exactly what the term has come to mean. Yes, digital matters, as I've been saying, but you can create a sense of difference without relying upon shoppers with mobile devices. And it's certainly worth considering that there's more to life than digital, whether you're big or small. And shoppers may ultimately, I suggest, revolt against the idea of screens. I was mentioning it with Bow Concept a few minutes back, but it matters. So just to quickly whip through, this is rather obscene looking device in the window of Palette to a French eyewear outfit. That baguette thrusts backwards and forwards in a very suggestive manner, thanks to the machine it's attached to. It's got almost nothing to do with the product that lies within, which is eyewear. Maybe it makes your eyes widen, I'm not sure. It does work on the fewer but better principle. That's likely to be the way of things in 2021. There will be fewer stores. They will be better because they'll have to be better for us to get up and get out there. And you're wondering, and the lady in the graphic on the right is sort of symptomatic of how they've tried to create a sense of difference on what is in many ways a fairly functional store. It's on Oxford Street in London, by the way. Or you might have this is Itsu, who makes sushi, and they, as soon as COVID hit, they were allowed to open, but they were aware that people wanted to keep their distance from each other. So they bought a couple of these sushi making robots, and you wander into this one, I've been in, and yeah, it's got screens, and you order on a screen, and the robot makes the sushi, and you pay, and out comes the product. I'm not saying that robots will be the be-all and end-all. They absolutely won't. And probably this may turn out to be something of a red herring for Itsu. But it's an interesting reaction, perhaps a response to what's been going on. As is this. Now, some of you may know where Canvey Island is. Some of you may even have had the misfortune to go there. It's in the Thames Estuary, down the road from London. It's a place that's separated from the mainland by about by a ditch, really. 3 or 4 feet of water, a meter or thereabouts. And Next certainly didn't want to go in there, but Morrison's, the grocer, did. So Morrison's gave Next a bit of the car park and said, you can put a click and collect pod in our car park. And you know that one of the most frustrating things at the moment when it comes to buying online is the business of finding that something doesn't work, doesn't fit, etc., etc. And you then have to spend ages queuing up to take it back. By creating this, when you go to Morrison's on Canvey Island, you just take the thing that you've got, drop it into a hatch, and away you go. In terms of a bit of branding for Next, it's pretty effective. In terms of getting more people into Morrison's, it's pretty effective. This is a pod shop in shop, or shopping car park more accurately. And certainly we can expect to see more of this sort of thing, I would suggest. Or this. And this is H&M Loop in Stockholm. It's their flagship. This opened October last year. And you know it's important because people are in white coats. And the deal is you wander in with a bit of clothing you no longer want. Those machines in there chew it up, spin it, turn it into thread. It's then knitted and upcycled into something else. And as I say, you know that they mean business. Look at them in their white coats there. Yeah, of course, they're not going to do this thing anywhere else. But it is about a billboard for sustainability, which matters a lot at the moment. As is this. This is Avon Calling. and it's their first ever. It's in Koreatown, which is a district in Los Angeles. It's their first ever store, and they decided that if you want to make people spend a bit of time, give them a bit of space. So they put in chairs, tables. You are not going to be in a hurry when you go into this place. And one of the things about cosmetics, jewelry, all those sort of things is the merchandise is small. Therefore, if you have a lot of space, you can afford to give people room to try before they buy, to relax. And it's, I've sort of written it somewhere between an airport lounge and a hotel lobby. That's what it looks and feels like. And it kind of works. And in terms of slowing people down, which will be one of the messages of 2021, this is pretty effective. And I thought I would show you this. This opened yesterday in Columbus, Ohio. Those of you who are my age may have come across Old Spice first time round. I remember I used to buy it for my dad when I was in my teens in the 70s. And it was the sort of stuff that you bought because it was manly, or so you were told. And Old Spice is owned by Procter & Gamble, and they've opened their first ever Old Spice shop come barber shop. This is what it looks like inside. You can see top left there, photos of blokes with 1970s hairstyles and moustaches. In black and white, there's a boat that's being cut in half to make the reception desk. And there are the barber's chairs at the back of the photo. All very manly, roughy tufty stuff. Yes, I'm sure it will do very well. It's on the university campus in Columbus, Ohio. So if you want an ironic haircut, this is probably where you will go. So what does all of this mean? Because I'm conscious of time. Well, it probably means the following, or I'm going to suggest to you it means the following. Digital matters, but not perhaps as much as you might think. Digital can be felt and experienced, but it doesn't have to be seen. Think of that On store in Brooklyn. Discount doesn't have to feel discount. Just because something is inexpensive doesn't mean that you should feel sullied when you go shopping there. And direct to consumer may grow faster. That's what that Old Spice is about, really. Food retail will need to be about more than simple provision of merchandise. And I think the whole food hall thing, which has been a major number over the last couple of years, will only continue to grow, as will hospitality within stores. When it comes to slowing people down, you've got to give them space and perhaps give them a cup of coffee, because that's what slows people down. The jury is absolutely out on unmanned stores, and probably they are too expensive as things stand. So that's it. Thank you very much for listening, and thank you for your time. I will hand you back to Duncan or Connor as we see fit. You need to unmute, Duncan. Now perhaps you're unmuted.
I do indeed need to unmute, John. Thank you for that. The usual trials and tribulations of Zoom. Listen, Connor, that was fantastic. Thank you very much. Listen, there's a couple of questions that have come up, and I was going to just invite Connor back in as well, just in terms of what's going on in Ireland and all that. But there's one quite interesting question here that I'm going to put to you, John, which is, how important is store location in a digital world? Yes, if the rise of e-commerce shows us anything, it's that practical store convenience in location will have a big part to play in a brand's success. What are your thoughts around store location in a digital world, John?
I think store location is as important as it has always been. That is why, for instance, IKEA are looking at going into city centres. That is why we are told, and it in fact is borne out by looking at our city centres, that is why we are shopping locally, and we are expecting something pretty good when we do go shopping locally. So given that a lot of us our horizons have shrunk a bit, and we are tending to shop within, shall we say, 1K of where we live, we'll expect to be able to get everything, and we'll expect a degree of experience. I mentioned earlier on, fewer but better. There will be probably more shops locally, and they will be better. So I think location in the digital world matters just as much as it always has done, to be honest, Duncan.
Interesting. There's also just one I have to ask you, because it just feels as though I should after everything's gone on this week, and that is over here. I'm not sure what it's like in the UK at the moment, but the government over here put a ban on click and collect for the time being as part of the restrictions. Yeah, and I'm just thinking of what you were showing there, particularly the one up next in Canvey Island, and sort of concurring with you about just how grim Canvey Island is as but click and collect in general, you know, to have that locked down in effect and not operating, how significant would that be to you as a retailer? What?
I think it's an extraordinary muddle-headed decision, if I'm totally honest. I can't for the life of me begin to understand why, if you have something like that Canvey Island pod, why it wouldn't be an advantage and why you would want to ban that. It defies any kind of logic, and I can't put it any more strongly than that. We obviously over here, click and collect is very much part of what retail's about at the moment, and thank God for that. Whatever the decision, it's been ill considered. Yeah,
no, I think there's probably about 115 people on this call that would concur with what you've said, including me. So it's useful to hear it coming from you as well. Connor, I'm just conscious, and there's a lot of stuff there that John talked about around store design and the way things are looking and so on. And I'm also just thinking around the amount of space that will be emerging as time goes on, particularly when we reopen, and stores that won't open, and shutters that remain down, retail space that will be available. And it seems to me to be giving a fantastic opportunity for up and coming people who want to try things out and set up on a small store and get it rolling, new designers and things like that. From your perspective, from Johnston's perspective, what are the sort of things that you're developing at the moment? What's the, if you wanted to set up a store from scratch and you wanted to do it a bit on the cheap, but you wanted to try something, make it look good, what would your view be from a Johnston perspective?
You're trying to talk me out of work here.
Yeah.
Look, I suppose just to touch on what John has said, a lot of the work that we're doing at the moment is very much trying to incorporate a lot of what you've shown and what you've shown us today. The big takeaway from me today was slow people down, get the experience back into everything, as whether it's as you say, the discount retailers trying to rush you out the door. Now they're actually trying to get you to slow down and experience the environment. So a lot of the work that we're doing at the moment is about that, generating experience within the store, incorporating an element of digital. So the click and collect while actually in store. So incorporating that from a fit out point of view. We mentioned the comfort factors. So when the customer's in store, that they actually feel comfortable. And that's as much to do with COVID as it is to do pre-COVID, where the retail environment that they're in is comfortable. The colors are soft, and everything that goes with that. As I mentioned at the outset, like when a customer comes to your door and you have an old coffee table with a plastic container on it containing hand sanitizer with a bit of baling twine so you don't run away with it, what's that telling the customer? So an awful lot of things like that. They're simple things. I suppose you mentioned as well local and convenience stores. Obviously, I think Ireland is a world leader when it comes to convenience stores and always has been. And again with its forecourt retailing. So I think that's more and more something that the bigger retailers are looking to incorporate. You mentioned the pineapples, so things like that the retailers are trying to incorporate something a bit more local within their store and connect on a more local level. And I think given that people are spending more and more time in their own home environment, that's something that will continue. And after lockdown, I can see that being even more important, that people will spend a bit more time in their local community, in their local area. And retailers are now building that into their designs and their concepts. And certainly what we're seeing with our fit outs is a lot of that.
It's interesting. So John, just before we close up, and you're just very conscious of time and so forth, but it does appear at the moment as though our city centres and our old shopping destinations are the ones that are under most pressure, doesn't it, out of all of this? So if you were sort of say one thing about how they might bounce back, you know, what would it be? What would your sort of big tip be for retailers in those locations? What do they need to do to get people back into those stores?
They need to be bloody sure that they're better than they were before, which is a fairly facile thing to say. But one of the things I think that will be apparent at the end of all of this is that the city centres will have, and I regret to say it, a good number of boarded up premises, which will stay boarded up for a while. And as I was saying, if you are going to get people away from their location, get people to go the extra mile, kilometre into the city centre, you've got to give them a pretty good reason for doing so. And with Connor sort of mentioned experience right at the beginning of all of this, experience will matter. I'm not quite sure how experience will play out, to be very honest, if we're all wearing face masks, because I suggest that we'll be wearing face masks for some time to come. However, you can get experience in many different forms, whether it's in terms of store design or whether it's in terms of what you actually encounter when you wander into the store or the presentation. All of those are elements that actually will come into play. I think if people don't try and raise their game a bit, they will find the going pretty tough. But there is the possibility that people will get bored of just being where they are, and they will make a shopping trip, and you've got to make it worth their while.
Fantastic. Okay, listen, guys. Connor, thank you very much for sponsoring today from Johnston Shopfitters. And John, it's been an absolute pleasure. As always, great to speak to you. And I'm sure you won't be a stranger in the future to us. And that's John Ryan from New Stores. And that's an excellent presentation. So thank you very much. And to everybody else, thank you for joining us again today. It's great to have you along. We'll be doing this again in a couple of weeks' time. So look forward to seeing you then. And stay safe out there, everyone. And thanks a million. Bye for now.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Duncan. Cheers.